This is Lisa Farris, CMO of Soundtrack Your Brand. You're listening to the business side of music.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
On the show with us today, all the way from Nashville, Tennessee. Well, actually, not anymore, is it?
Not anymore.
You're a true Southern boy now, aren't you?
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, he's been on the show. You've been on the show several times, in fact, if I remember. You've been co-host and guest and co-host guest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're kind of doing that today, too.
Yeah.
Co-host and slash guest. Vinny Rebus with Indie Connect and Cartney. Did I get that right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
We should probably chat for a few minutes about Cartney so our people know.
Sure.
We're doing something a little different today that we haven't done in the past. I don't know, a month or so ago, we put out a questionnaire on Facebook and LinkedIn, and we asked people, send us your question about the music business. And who better to help me navigate those rocky waters than Vinny? So welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. Before we get started, let's chat just real quick about Cartney, because this is a new endeavor for you.
It is.
And tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I'm old, and
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so am I.
and I've coached a lot of artists, over 1,000 artists over the years. And what I realized is that everybody has the same questions, the same problems, the same challenges. And I don't have all the answers, but I have a big enough network that I'm able to go out and get the answers. So what I did is I started interviewing people from the industry, experts at all different levels, just asking them the questions that everybody's asked me over the years. And it could be as, to the level of how do I tour with a major artist, or how do I get to work on cruise ships, or how do I copyright my song? How do I know what the TikTok algorithms are? I mean, we cover the entire gamut. We don't get really heavy into production and stuff like that. We do have some stuff, but it's not, detailed about the software or anything like that. This is general music business, how to survive, how to make money, how to maximize your efforts and everything in the music industry. And so we've got 125 interviews online right now, and it's at Cartney.com, CARTNE.com. I'm actually in the process of moving it to a new platform, so if you go on it right now, it's kind of messy because I haven't touched it in a couple of weeks. But the whole idea behind it is just to answer all those questions that people have, that they ask all the time, and they have to pay somewhere to be able to get those answers. And, we've got 40 videos that are free, that are really basic information that every artist needs to know. And then after that, it's going to be $12 a month for all of the other content on there.
And when you think about it, if you went out and you hired a consultant, you would be spending $50, $75, $100, $150 an hour.
An hour, right.
Just to take their advice. And this is a great economical music platform for anybody that's aspiring to learn more about the business and has those specific questions. As you said, you have all of these great industry leaders providing their wealth of information.
Absolutely. And we have a community on there. So you can actually connect with other learners. You can connect with some of the experts that we've interviewed and everything if they join that part. So it's going to be a really, really vibrant place. And we're incorporating learning tools. So we've got a place on there where you can take notes for every video. We're going to have little quizzes that you won't be judged on, but just to see if you understood what was in the content and everything. So It's powerful. It's really powerful.
I think people need to look it up, and they go to Cartney.com.
Cartney.com.
Yes, Cartne, like Paul McCartney.
Right.
.com.
That's exactly where the title came from.
Well, it's Americana Fest week, which is one of the reasons, if you're watching the video, I've got my Americana Fest hat on. It's been a busy week. I think it's also a great opportunity to kind of go down these dozen or so questions that we had. And I think most of them, we're going to kind of give that 36,000 foot view. Let's start. And I think, I'm relying on you to help me, like I said, navigate these waters. And so let's start with the first question. This was submitted by Jerome Matthew. And he asked, since Apple Music is one of the highest paying distributors, should artists be focusing on promoting there, or is Spotify much easier to reach fans on despite the lower revenue? And I got to tell you, that's a good question, because this past week, as I was sharing with you before the show, been doing a little battle of odds with Apple Podcasts. That in itself is not easy waters to navigate. So in this questions aspect, is Apple better or is Spotify better, or?
So there's two answers to this, because one is to answer it exactly. Yes, Apple pays a little bit more. Spotify has a whole lot more people. So you're going to make a little bit less money per on Spotify, but you can get a lot bigger reach. Whereas on Apple, I personally have never been on Apple Music. So I'm just an example. I don't know very many people that have never used Spotify.
Right.
But, most people are on Spotify. And so I recommend that you promote both. And that's where Linktree or something like that comes in, where, you give people one link and then they can go and choose where they want to be able to listen to your music. So that's number one. The second piece of this is that promotion or let's say, being on these distribution platforms like Spotify and Apple is not necessarily about making money. You've got to have a lot of downloads or a lot of listens in order to make money on there. It's about visibility. It's about credibility. So what you want more than anything is to be able to be in a lot of different places, no matter where people are looking for you. And you want to be able to be very accessible and everything. You want to make sure that your Spotify for artists is filled out so people know how to reach you. All of these different things. It's all promotion, because the bottom line is, with these platforms, you're not going to make a lot of money unless you have a whole lot of streams, unless you have a whole lot of followers, a lot of fans. And it's also the kind of platform where you have no idea who your fans are. You have no idea who's listened to it. Doesn't matter where it's placed. If it goes on a playlist, people listen to the playlist, but they don't stop with every song and go check out every artist. And so, it's more about people need to hear and see you multiple times before they ever take any notice of you. It's just plain marketing 101, and we'll get into that in one of the other questions. But, you have to make a lot of impressions before people actually recognize you. So being where you can be, being in different playlists, being on all of the different platforms, Deezer, all of them, that's really critical, so that no matter where people go, you're going to be there, and they're going to, hopefully come across you. And so, you have to put the money aside in that situation and say, this is a visibility thing, nothing else. And that's when you start really maximizing the use of those platforms.
We have a question from Maverick AY, who asks, and this is a good question. I like a lot of these questions that came in. How can emerging artists navigate the challenges of self-promotion and building a brand? And when we talk about emerging artists, obviously we're talking about the independent artists. Mm-hmm. Not the ones that have a record label behind them. This is a good question. So how can an emerging artist navigate the challenges of self-promotion and building that brand? Because that's really what it's about.
Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of things that you can do on your own, and they're pretty obvious. You got to build your social media. If you know how the social media works, then that's really critical. So you know how to maximize the algorithms and things like that. You know how to build a fan base, you know how to drive people there and everything. That's really critical. But there are also lots of tools out there that can help you, and there are lots of people that you can hire, publicists, marketing people, social media experts, and things like that, who can help you navigate all that. Now, that does get expensive, there's no question, but it is a matter of knowing how the platforms work and then maximizing them. So going back to the whole idea of getting multiple impressions, putting a song up on TikTok is great. Putting it up once is great. It's going to go past just like it would on a playlist. People will check it out. That's cool. They'll like it, and then it's gone, and they don't have any following. They're not following you. They're not doing anything else, and maybe they'll get to see another one someday. If you are smart about it, you're doing multiple posts with the same music behind it, but a different video. Then it comes up multiple times, and people start getting that ear candy. It starts driving in, and they get that recognition and everything. And this is going to be the answer on a lot of these things.
Yeah, right.
Because it's marketing 101. It's, you have to have, they say you have to have 7 impressions before somebody even takes notice of you. And which is why you hear the same ads all the time, even if you are scrolling through political things and everything, articles and everything, you're going to see the same thing, just written a different way. It's to drive that whole point home. And so it's the same thing with music. You've got to show up in multiple areas, and it's time consuming. There's no question. The other side of that is making sure that you're engaging with your fans. This is really, really critical. Being able to take your fans on a journey where the first thing they do is they discover you, but then you've got to move them to the point where they become super fans. So you've got to get them to the point where they want to follow you. Eventually they give you their mailing address, email address, so you can get them on that list. And then, you can move them along the ladder to the point where they're spending money on you. It takes a while to get them to do that. And then lastly, you get them into your fan club, where they're paying $10 a month or whatever, and you've got mailbox money coming from them. You think about the 1,000 true fans concept. It says, what if you had 1,000 people that were paying $10 a month? That's $120,000 a year coming in mailbox money.
Yeah.
Just with 1,000 fans. And you can give them enough content, if you got real fans, that people will love it.
And with that kind of money, you can start providing some opportunities to where they can earn things. They can maybe win something. They can get a free T-shirt or a CD or a signed picture or something. Just as the artist, you're showing your appreciation to those fans.
Fan appreciation is the most important thing that you can do. That's the only way you're going to drive them from just noticing you to getting to the point where they become super fans.
Yeah, I agree. Next question is, I hope I don't butcher his name, Henry Bockenham. What is the fastest and most effective way to build an audience for a digital release? It kind of gets back to what we were previously talking about, is building that fan base, building that brand. But what is, in your wisdom, the fastest and most effective way to build that audience?
Paid ads.
Paid ads.
Paid ads.
So where would you buy those ads?
You can, whatever platform your audience is on, first of all. So if you got an older audience, they're probably on Facebook. They may not be on TikTok. If you got a younger audience, they're going to be on TikTok. They're going to be on Instagram. So you want, paid ads that are really targeted toward fans who love the kind of music that you play. So if you have a classic rock sound, you might want to say that I want to target people who are fans of Bon Jovi or Led Zeppelin or whatever. And so you're really reaching the exact people who would absolutely love what you do, and they would appreciate it. It doesn't have to be that expensive, but paid advertising, he's talking about fast here now. I don't ever recommend fast. I recommend that as part of the process, but it should take 6 or 8 weeks for you to plan and market a launch and create anticipation. The biggest thing that you can do is create anticipation. You want to get pre-saves because that helps the Spotify algorithms. It makes it, when Spotify sees that on the first day, all these people are listening to your music, then they have a tendency to put it into playlists, official Spotify playlists and everything. So it's really a matter of being able to create that anticipation for it. And so that you can't do that fast, unless you're Taylor Swift.
Right.
But if you don't have that huge fan base already, you've got to get in front of more people. It's the bottom line. You got to get in front of more people, and it's going to cost money, but it's the most effective way.
Talking about spending money, we're going to take a break and get a word in for a couple of our advertisers that really help support this show. In the studio with us today, the founder and creator of Indie Connect and Cartney, Vinny Rebus.
You're listening to the business side of music.
It may have been Tammy Wynette who sang Stand By Your Man, but it was actually Nancy Jones who stood by the legendary George Jones for more than 30 years and helped bring him to the light. Now in her new book, Playin' Possum, readers get an intimate look at the country music legend through the eyes of his wife and partner. Nancy knew George Jones better than anyone. The good and the bad, the horrendous and the hilarious. Married in 1983, George quit his wild and wicked ways for a while, but Nancy learned all too soon that there were demons holding a strong grip on the man she loved. People who knew the possum credit Nancy's tenacious love, faith, and encouragement for saving George's life and rebuilding his career. For the first time in Playin' Possum, Nancy Jones reveals the true insider perspective and little-known stories about the country music legend, his battles with cocaine, alcohol, abusive behavior, battles with himself, and against the demons that sought to control and destroy him. Read the compelling first-hand account from the woman who refused to give up on George Jones. Playin' Possum is available now. Order your copy today from nancyjonesbooks.com, Amazon, and more. As a musician, you have a dream, that vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or you're just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about a committed, benevolent interest in them personally. This independence, coupled with that committed, benevolent interest, means they represent you, the client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products, it's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact my buddy, John Adams, with Money Concepts at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309. You can also email John at jadams@moneyconcepts.com.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, sitting across the podcast table, Vinny Rebus with Cartney and Indie Connect. If you ever get a chance, please, 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 I implore you, go and check out those sites. It's a wealth of information, especially if you're an aspiring artist. Check out what Vinny has created there with Cartney and Indie Connect. This is pretty much Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole, this next question here. This is from Theo Bailey. And I got to tell you, on the Business Side of Music podcast, we've had a lot of people on here talking about NFTs over the past few years, and it's still a foreign language for me. But here's the question. When do we expect the NFT music format to take off commercially like vinyl, cassette, and CD before it?
I don't think it will, and there's a reason for it.
Thank you. I concur. I agree. I agree with what you're saying there.
Well, there's a couple of reasons that I have to say that. Number one, an NFT is an intangible, and it is not the music itself, and so it's not going to replace the other things. It's another form of it, but it's not going to replace, having CDs or streaming and those kind of files. So that's number one. Number two, when was the last time that a fan came up to you and said, I wish I had an NFT of your song? You said right at the beginning, it's still foreign to me. It's still foreign to most people. They haven't got a clue. So trying to get your fan base to understand what it is that you're trying to do is really difficult. Will it ever happen? It will become popular, but it'll stay popular with the people who have a lot of fans. You've got to have a lot of fans because very few people are going to, actually buy the NFT. If you've got a big enough fan base, you'll find enough people that take a risk.
But it's much like I read an article a while back about a band that have decided that they're no longer going to press vinyl. That's always been their big thing. They would go out on the road, and of course they have a streaming music platform. They would create CDs and they carry vinyl, but the cost of doing vinyl, along with the limited number, I think what they said in the article is it's really audiophiles that are buying the vinyl, and it's just not a big enough market. I think NFTs are the same thing. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and it's a risk. I mean, it's always a risk. You're buying into something that you're hoping that the song will take off, that the album will take off, whatever you're buying the NFT that it represents. If you don't have a big enough fan base, then there's no guarantee that it's going to ever make any money, and anybody's going to make any money on it, you or the people who bought the NFTs. So unless you get people who are just doing it to support you, and that's fine, but I think if they had the choice between buying that and buying a CD, even though people don't really listen to CDs as much anymore, it's still a souvenir. It's a physical souvenir, and people want that.
Right. I agree. This is a question from Donna McClure. Shout out to Donna. We've known each other I'm going to say it, Donna. We've known each other for decades. But she asked the question, what makes musicians go from playing to producing like I did? Well, that's kind of a two-part question almost, and I'll take the lead, and then you can step in. I went from playing to producing, but there was a lot of middle ground that I covered in between there. I was a tour manager and a production manager and a promoter rep, and operated some venues and did everything I could in the music business. I think for me, is you get to a point in your life, in your career, where you don't want to get on stage, set up, tear down, perform, drive long distances to get to the next city. Producing allowed me the opportunity, whether it's a podcast show such as this or it's producing for an artist in the studio, it gave me that opportunity to sleep in my own bed at night, but still have my foot in the door in the music business. What's your take on why artists would transition from that to producing?
Well, I'm looking at people who are a little bit younger. They don't have a long history in the business. And so there's two reasons. One, it's much more much more affordable to buy your own equipment because you can then produce from then on. I think the biggest thing is control. You want to have control over your sound. And, it gets expensive to go into a studio, and it gets expensive to get hooked up with a producer and have to pay them, and then they have control over the sound, or it's going to take longer while you're trying to get them to understand what you're trying to get across and everything. So I think that a lot of people just want to take control of that sound and learn how to do it, because then they are never limited. If you come up with a song idea today, you can go right in the studio and cut something, cut a demo, cut whatever.
In addition to that, you can also produce for other artists.
You can.
And so now you're creating an additional revenue stream that you never had before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there's a lot of reasons why.
This question, I think, is one of my favorites. And it's from Ann Mitchell. Once again, another friend who I've known since high school, really. And she's an artist herself, not in the music aspect, but she does glass blowing, and her work is amazing. She's out of Poway, California. She asks, when should you introduce children to an instrument? It's kind of a two-part question here, because then she says, education that most performers have. Well, if you're like me, college was a great place for me to go and play music, but I got nothing else out of it.
Yeah, I know it well. I had a 4-year scholarship to college. I went 1 year and then quit to go into music. And so it's, getting back to the question, I don't think that it's ever too early to introduce a child to the music. That's why they have toy pianos and stuff like that. I mean, you don't know what kind of talent your child has until you introduce them. Maybe not a difficult instrument like a guitar where they couldn't, string it or something, but a keyboard or something like that.
Or a drum.
Or drums.
Yeah.
That was my well, I started out on the accordion, and I graduated, when I was 4, I graduated to the large accordion that I couldn't pick up. So I switched to drums. But I don't think there's any way that you can say that it's too early to introduce somebody to an instrument.
I think when I was in 2nd grade, maybe 3rd grade, my parents got me interested in playing the piano, and I was taking formal piano lessons. In schools back in those days, in elementary school, I think it was around 4th grade, they call them recorders now. Back in those days, we called them flutophones. Every student, every kid in school was given the opportunity to pick these instruments up and really decide if you had the propensity to be able to play music. I think we're missing that these days.
I think so too. It's gone in a whole different direction. But then again, I don't have kids, so I don't really know.
Yeah, that's a tough. And I'm very musically inclined. I played multiple instruments growing up. Still enjoy the love of music, and yet out of 5 kids, not one of them, not a single one of them, pursued the music path. Now, I have one who's into the podcasting world. She's producing her own podcasting show after working in law enforcement for years. But yeah, I think you have to at least provide that opportunity, and it doesn't have to be an expensive endeavor as a
Not
parent.
at all.
There's a lot of used instruments. You can rent instruments, but find something that they love, and it may be the greatest thing that ever happened.
And you just said something that's really key. You don't necessarily have to settle on the first instrument. Maybe keyboard isn't their thing.
Right.
Maybe drums is. So, give them the chance to try different things. Like I said, I started playing accordion when I was 4. That's when I started taking lessons. And I've been playing, keyboards, guitar, drums, for years. A lot of years. Let's go to the second half of this.
Yeah, please.
So it's interesting. I did an interview with a gentleman who's an attorney, and he's an associate professor at Lipscomb. And this interview was called, "Do I Need a Music Degree?" And he goes through all of the different scenarios of, who would benefit from a degree. It depends on what area of the industry you want to be in. And so if you want to play in an orchestra, they're probably going to want you to have a degree. If you want to teach, you're going to have a degree.
At least a bachelor's, if not a master's.
Right. Whereas a lot of people, they just go out and get the experience. And that's what I did. I mean, I never had any formal training other than lessons.
But didn't you find that University of Hard Knocks, which is what I did too, didn't you find that to be beneficial? It's a hard lesson to learn, but you do learn.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than going out there and doing it, to me. What you learn in school, now I'm gonna qualify this. I have a lot of interns from Belmont University. They have degrees in the music business, and most of them end up using that to get a job within the industry, but not as artists. It will help them a little bit as an artist, but it's more about, learning publishing or learning, going on to become an entertainment attorney or things like that. You can also go to schools like Full Sail and learn about production and things like that without having to sometimes do a 4-year degree. A lot of them have like a 9-month program or something like that.
Or mortgage the house to pay for it.
There you go. So, the School of Hard Knocks, going out there and doing it is, to me, that's always the best way because you learn it. But that doesn't mean that you have to do it alone. You can find yourself a mentor who can help move things along. That's the whole idea behind Cartney. It's your mentor. So that you don't make the fatal mistakes, the costly mistakes that I made, that a lot of other people have made.
A lot of us have made in this business.
Yeah, I don't think you can go through without making mistakes. But, if you can get through without having an intellectual property challenge that's going to cost you a lot of money to go through an attorney, or you can not sign a bad contract and stuff like that. I have a whole section just on scams. I have 9 videos so far just on scams. How do you avoid an A&R scam? How do you avoid a publishing scam? How do you avoid a marketing scam, a publicity scam? And so if you study the industry, there are a lot of ways, you should study the industry. Let me say that. There are a lot of ways to do that, whether it's Cartney or picking up, there's books that are incredible. There are courses that you can take. And so it's just, I would say it's a matter of how do you learn best? Some people need to have it told to them. Some people want to just go and research it. Some people just do it.
So some people learn by books, other people learn by doing.
Right. Some people by video, some people by audio. That's why we have all these different mediums.
Before we take another break, I want to get one last question in here. This could be directed to either one of us, and this is from Camille Matthews, who says, how did you know this would be your life's journey and at what age? Now, for me, I was so enchanted, might be the word, when I went to my first concert on my own without my parents taking me, and the band was Santana, and it was on stage, and they were performing. And at that time, he was really just becoming a superstar, Carlos Santana's band. I'm dating myself, but Abraxas had just come out. It had a lot of hits on it. I found myself standing at the lighting console and the sound mixing board and watching what those guys were doing. 13 years old, and I went, this is what I got to do. This is it. And nothing else mattered at that point. That was going to be my life's journey.
Well, mine wasn't quite that kind of experience. I mentioned mine already. Got a 4-year scholarship to go to college for medicine. I was going to go to be a doctor. And after 1 year,
No, I didn't know that about you.
That's it. And the reason was...
We're going to start calling you Dr. Vinny.
Because I was dating a girl who wanted to be a doctor.
Aha. The truth comes out.
It is the truth. It's the absolute truth. But the bottom line is that after 1 year, I was so miserable because I wasn't doing music. Wow. I had to do music. And you try going home and telling your parents, who've told everybody that there's going to be a doctor in the family, that you're not going to be a doctor, you're going to be a rock and roll star. It was not pretty. My parents didn't talk to me for 3 weeks. But then they started forgiving me when I started taking them to cruises and resorts and stuff like that. But yeah, that was when I knew there was nothing else that was going to replace the music. And I knew that if I put my mind to it, I'd be able to make a living at it. And the minute, the week that I quit school, I was working 5 nights a week in music and making enough money.
Yeah,
so
that's it. We're going to take a break, get a word in for a couple of our other sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Vinny Rivas.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives, whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
Since 1963, Korg has been creating new experiences in music and performance. That is what drove the creation of some of Korg's most legendary products, such as the Poly 6, the M1, the Electribe, the Triton, the Minilogue, the Kronos, Wave State, Op6, and most recently the Nautilus, which is what we have here in our studio. Korg is dedicated to creating new, innovative, and uncompromising instruments which maintain the highest quality to inspire music makers, past, present, and future. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products and start creating new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, sitting across the podcast table, Vinny Rivas. For those that are watching the video or those that are listening to the show, every once in a while, if you hear what sounds like a little jingle of metal, or if you watch the video and you see our side curtain, which takes everybody backstage into the green room, Buddy the Music Dog. We're called Music Dog Studios here in Nashville. Buddy, his real name is actually Buddy Lee. loves to be in the studio when we have guests, but sometimes he has the attention span of a gnat, and he'll go back in and out and turn around and sit down. So we apologize for those distractions, but he is the studio dog, so we can't kick him out.
You know, at my house, it would be my dog, Penny Lane.
Penny Lane.
So
we have another question from Camille Matthews. She asks, do you have things in your past that you could write about that would be so touching it could be a number one song? Well, I will say I probably would have a few things that wouldn't be a number one song, but could probably be a fairly decent script for a movie.
I think everybody does. It's not, you know, part of it is the story itself. There's no question. But a lot of it is the writing. It's how the song is presented. So you could write a song about, you know, yeah, there was this time when I was really in a dark place and it was the middle of the night and I was staring at the wall, and, you know, or you could write, hello, darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk to you again.
What a great song. I mean, those are very few that when you hear them in that first line of hello, darkness, my old friend, that just literally you stop breathing for a moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. So sometimes it's in the way you describe it. And, you know, you can pick any situation and find something that's magical about it, or something that will touch people, some kind of emotion out of it. I think we all have lots and lots of life stories. You know, there's a great book, if I can mention a great book.
Absolutely.
By Lisa Aschmann called 1,000 Songwriting Ideas. It's just amazing the things that she talks about. You know, she just makes suggestions. You know, what would you say to someone who hurt you? What would you say to this? I mean, just that kind of thing. You start realizing that you've got so many experiences, so many people that you've met that you could write about, so many things that you've done that you could write about, places you've gone that you could write about. And, you know, whether it's, you know, think about, you know, you can say, I'm going on vacation, or you can say, take me home, country roads. And, you know, it's just the way it's written and how, you know, how catchy it is and whether it fits with the times and everything. But I think everybody has the stories. Not everybody has the talent to write it.
And what's interesting is sometimes those people that have the story and have the talent to write it, I think the perfect example for me was Bonnie Raitt's big hit, I Can't Make You Love Me. Mm-hmm. What an amazing song. It just rips your heart out. It was written by a retired NFL football player. This guy said, okay, I'm done playing in professional football. I'm going to move to Nashville and be a songwriter, and wrote this just amazing body of work.
I think he co-wrote it.
Yes.
And they tried a whole lot of different singers for that. And then, you know, when they brought Bonnie in, she was magical on it. And then on keyboards, they tried a whole bunch of different keyboard players, and they ended up Bruce Hornsby.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt when you got Bruce Hornsby playing.
He's the one that made that magical music piano track behind it. So, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the most emotional, heart-wrenching songs you could ever hear.
We have a question from Clemente Ernesto, who says, is music streaming the future of music? Aren't we already there?
I was going to say, it's the music industry right now. Will it change? Eventually. You know, first of all, right now they're working on all the digital blockchain stuff and everything, and they've got to get everybody on the same page using the exact same format and everything, and that's been a bear because there's 50 different companies out there at least that are trying to be the platform that everybody uses and everything. Streaming is not going to go away. There may be other forms. There may be a lot more visual things. There may be some 3D things that happen that become really popular. There may be some things with AI. I don't know exactly what that would be, and I don't want to say it's going to replace the music, but, you know, I don't think that the idea of just having the access to music and all the music that's ever created anytime you want it is going to go away.
Yeah. I think streaming, although the quality of the audio, and I'm going to say it, I'm an audiophile. I'm a huge audio nut, and I really want to hear all those frequencies. And I think streaming has hampered that a bit in, you know, when they compress the sound, they compress the audio. But The good news is in my car, I got a great stereo system, and I'll hook up my phone to Spotify. And, it still sounds really, really good. But, vinyl's making a resurgence. CDs are making a resurgence. Our youngest son was over at the house the other day, and he's buying cassettes now. Who would have thought? I mean, I can't tell you how many boxes of cassettes I gave away years ago. That format's dead. It's going away. It's never going to come back. And I think probably did quite a bit of that with CDs. I think at one time in my life, I had over 10,000 CDs in my library collection. I'm probably maybe 1,000 today because I've transferred everything to streaming. It just simplifies my life when it comes to listening.
Oh, I agree 100%. Streaming is just so economical and so simple that it's going to be the form that people use, whether it's video or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to stay. That's not going to change.
This is from Tony Green, who says, if you sign away your master to a label, does the label now have any sway in blocking a sync deal your publisher is trying to organize? That's a bit of a complicated question there. And I can tell you, it's definitely out of my wheelhouse.
In order to get a sync placement, the publisher has to sign off on it, and the person who owns the masters has to sign off on it. So yes, your record label has just as much sway as, in fact, in some cases, they might even consider that they have more sway than the publisher. And the reason for that is that the record label invests money in getting those masters made. Well, I'm assuming that you've been signed to a label and they paid for the masters and everything. So they've got to recoup that. A publisher really doesn't have anything, invested in the song, and so it's all gravy. So it's really easy to get, a song cleared by the music supervisor from the publisher, get publishing clearing. But getting it from the master, whoever owns the master, it's very difficult.
They're the ones with the key.
They're the ones with the key because they have the most invested in it.
A couple more questions here. With revenue from streaming plays being so low, what can artists and composers do to improve their earnings from recorded music? And that's from Jimmy McGurr.
Okay, so there's a lot of things. The first thing that always comes to mind is the sync placements. You can get your songs into film and TV and commercials, anything like that. You can make a lot of money, especially if you get it into a position where you're getting broadcast royalties. A friend of mine, Turk Wilder, I don't know if you know Turk, a couple of years ago I ran into him and he wrote the theme song to Walker, Texas Ranger, and he still makes $60,000 a year on it.
That's nice mailbox money.
That's from the 90s. So, and there's no time during the day where Walker is not being played somewhere in the world. And so, yeah, that's that's great mailbox money. So definitely getting sync placements is a big thing. You can use it to build your fan base. You create that fan club and you're giving them exclusive content. So that's where some of your recorded music can help make some money. There's no question. You can still do CDs, you can still do albums and things like that. Make them unique. If you do a CD, don't put it in just a regular CD case. Do something that's really special. Make it something that is a collectible, and you can make money off of that.
It actually becomes a physical NFT.
Exactly.
in a setting, yeah.
Well, sort of. Yeah, I mean, you just got to get creative with it. But there's so many different options. You can take your recorded music and sell it to or license it to, say, videographers for weddings, things like that. People who put together YouTube videos and
as long
and
as
stuff
it's
like
not
that.
I Can't Make You Love Me. You don't want to use that for a wedding video.
Not for a wedding. There is a gentleman in town, Bob Della Posta, who is a publisher, and the way he made his impact, his living, was he would Google, let's say, Russian country singers. And he would find singers in Russia who were singing cover songs, and he would email them and say, I'm a Nashville publisher, and I love your voice, and I was wondering if you were looking for any original songs. And these people are like, oh, a publisher from Nashville contacted me and everything. And he would license the song itself, but he would also take the master without the vocals and he would license that to them so they didn't have to go into the studio. And that would be a couple of $100, $300, something like that. And he'd sell them sheet music. And so, I mean, you just get creative with it. There are ways that you can do it. You can, if a song becomes popular enough, you can turn it into a karaoke track that people can sing along with. You just gotta think about who your audience is and what form would they love it in.
Last question of the day from our buddy, our mutual friend, Doug Robertson. It's always good to hear from Doug. Is it a good career move to work as a supporting act, a sideman, etc., to support a star?
Yes, it's always a good move. The question becomes, how much do you want to be the star? Is it going to drive you crazy not to be the star? I mean, there are people who absolutely love just being the backup musician, backup singer, and making somebody else shine. That would be me. I absolutely loved my roles in bands because I was best at doing strings and horns and stuff like that rather than piano and piano solos. And I was hired a lot to just do that. And, to make a live artist sound like they have a whole orchestra behind them. And I loved that. It was so creative. It was so much fun. And it's not something I wanted to do for myself because I'm not a great singer at all. And so it really depends on your drive and, what's driving you. A supporting act, you're going to, if you do that the right way and you do it enough and you capitalize on it, you're going to end up being the headliner eventually. So that's always good too. So, it really depends on, it's a personal thing. Some people just have to be, they're not happy supporting somebody else. Not that it's not a bad thing. It's just that they really feel like they want their music out there. They want to be up front. And if that's your passion, then these things that we're talking about, supporting other artists become a stepping stone for it. But you always have your eye on that final goal.
There's a great movie out if you ever get a chance to watch it. I think it's on Netflix. I'm not sure. It focuses on just this, and it's called 20 Feet from Stardom is the film. And it talks about all the backup musicians and the backup singers who worked with all of these, like Sting, what are the background vocalists doing? And in some instances, they tried to make it on their own and they couldn't. And this is where they relegated themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that because you're either working in the studio or you're working on stage. You're still in front of thousands upon thousands of artists and living that dream. It's just not your name in the marquee.
I manage an artist, if I can do a little plug here.
Please do.
Tracy Hamlin. Tracy has been for the last 20 plus years singing backup for major artists. A lot of the R&B artists right now, she's on the road with Peebo Bryson, and she's his duet partner. And if you know Peebo, he's got a lot of famous duets, a lot of Disney songs like Beauty and the Beast and stuff like that. And she's his duet partner. And it's taken this long before she's decided, I need to go out and start doing my own shows. And we are able to leverage all of that experience and all those contacts and everything to get her, I've got her headlining on cruise ships and theaters and stuff like that. For her, it was a career for a long time. She got to the point where I want to do it on my own. I don't want to be subject to, other people's whims and everything. Sometimes the artists are not, as you know, not all artists are really nice to the staff and everything like that. So she just decided it's that time, and she went looking for somebody that could help her do that. And so I don't think it's ever a bad thing, but you have to know this is just a stepping stone if you really want to be the headliner, and then work those contacts, those resources, those relationships, everything to get to that point where you become the headliner.
Vay, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. This was a lot of fun. We're going to do this again.
I would love to.
Yeah. In the meantime, I want to give a shout out to our loyal listeners. Without you, we wouldn't be one of the most listened to podcasts, music industry shows in the world, including number one in several countries around the world these days. We're real thrilled about that. If you enjoy our show, check out our Facebook page at the Business Side of Music Podcast. Please, please, please don't forget to subscribe and definitely hit the like button. While you're at it, please go to our page on YouTube and click on the Business Side of Music Podcast to subscribe. You can also check out our webcasts on there and get to see me and such notables as Vinny Rivas here in the studio. Until the next time.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Aschmann.